All right. So, Tati, we met a gazillion years ago in New York City. And one of the things that we have always aligned on is the mindset around growth and opportunity and innovation. And while, we sit in different chairs, one of the things that we recently came together around is the opportunity to improve customer experience and other dimensions of retail by using some of these like gnarly AI technologies and tools and all the whiz bang stuff that I geek out on, right? So one of them is called LangChain. And I think you get excited when we talk about LangChain. So let's try to talk about LangChain in an isolated kind of, short 2-minute conversation here. What is LangChain, Tati, from your vantage point, not the technical nerdville that I live in, and why are you so excited about it?
So thank you for having me. This is super exciting to talk to you about the things we always talk about, which is I'm a process improvement. I'm obsessed with process improvement. I'm obsessed with process in general.
Totally.
And the why I didn't know anything about LangChain before our conversations, then start looking into it and like, wait, what? This works in a modular fashion, but wait, it sits a top current systems, which is it was the biggest unlock for me because so much of the technology that I've been exposed to in the past only works if you strip everything that you have and put a brand new system in place with so much risks to it. And even if you have the money to do it, which is very rare, it's a tremendous amount of change management, of risk,
Yep.
of potential losses. There's so much tied to it that then you start doing things. It becomes so small what you do with these technologies that could do so much for your business that it becomes so little that it impacts nothing. And at the end, you go, oh well, we had this big technology. We partnered with insert name here. And what I'm excited about LangChain is that actually we can plug in and it can transform something like the domain expertise, the brain, the operations brain that I bring, and that so many others out there have, and automate it and create real solutions and develop those solutions alongside my brain, my thoughts, my solutions. So I would say that to me was the biggest unlock, and how customized it can be was the other one. If I was telling anybody about LangChain and why is it more exciting than some other LLM technologies out there and some others that people know better, is that yes, it will take a little bit more maybe in the beginning to it's not an interface that's ready for you to go in and build your tool. But at the same time it is, because if you have some minimal input in there, if you have the right input and the right ideas, you will get exponential returns than you would in any other model. So that's what makes me excited about it.
Love it. Phenomenal answer. Now, so you helped me understand something that I had no idea. And it was the following. You're like, Alec, you do realize, right, that most of the systems, or I'm not going to put words in your mouth, let you go and take it one step further. But you were like, generally speaking, the system that understands you as a consumer in your favorite physical retail store is somewhat detached and or doesn't talk to the system that understands you online with the e-commerce transaction you just did, and it creates all sorts of friction that turns into all sorts of different dimensions of loss value and so on and so forth. So when we started talking about LangChain, I think it was really neat the way you described how LangChain as a chassis, right, can help connect data sets such as the e-commerce data set to the physical data set to create a better customer experience, which also has a revenue implication, right? Is that about right? And if so, expand upon that. I would love to hear more.
It has a major revenue implication, but beyond that has a bottom line, also has a cost efficiency implication that is huge, because companies and the vast majority of retailers out there are working on what I call a Frankenstein system, right?
Yeah.
So you had these systems and you added a little piece and you added another little piece and you upgraded this and you did that, and you end up with these systems that when they interact, they are getting 5-10% of the value of the interaction because they only interact in certain things, because that's all you could pull together with what you had, right? This is the best you could do. A lot of retailers and a lot of companies buying out of the box solutions that at the end of the day, you buy something that sounds like it could do all these things, but you don't have the capabilities to do that. And so the implication of LangChain, that if we pick on that specific example alone of the integration of a customer behavior online and in store and the brick and mortar side, and you can properly integrate and you can be measuring the right, which is something we can talk about all day as well. Are you measuring the right things? Are your KPIs the right KPIs? How are you measuring? I was having this conversation with somebody about how many times this data is coming and it's about 30% right, and then you're feeding it to these state-of-the-art systems, and you're only getting a fraction, because it's diminishing law of diminishing returns. You're only getting a fraction of what these systems could give you because of that. So the fact that this alone, just data and KPIs, that will have an immediate direct impact on revenues.
All right, I love that. So I'm gonna probe a little bit more, and we're gonna go a little bit past the original constraint on the conversation, just because I think that folks will love to understand and hear a little bit more on this. So, is it safe to say that generally speaking, legacy data and technical infrastructure in the quote unquote average retailer, the physical store system doesn't necessarily have the same understanding of that same human that walks in as does the e-commerce bit? And so therefore, if I walk into a store and I want to return something I bought via e-commerce, it might create a suboptimal experience that frankly, like just it seems like it shouldn't happen that way, but that's kind of what's going on. And retailers don't typically have much of a choice to fix that other than just like a gigantic rip and replace and replatforming and all of that stuff.
That is 100% correct, or we'll say 99% correct, because you have a few out there that are innovating and that are working towards and see the return on that investment and are able to do that, especially if they made it part of their digital transformation, right? So if they're looking at this, because one of the key ways to solve for this issue is to look at this and not to contradict ourselves here, to say, hey, we can solve things in a modular fashion. Mm-hmm. But you also need to be thinking about this as a whole, as an ecosystem that you have of technology, of customers, and how you can interact with that. And so 99%, and I'm certain that you have had this experience, as many people that are listening have had this experience, where you go somewhere and they either have to go to a different computer or a different program. They have to get a member of management involved. They have to make a phone call to totally. Whatever mystery person is on the other side of that line to justify, and then very openly telling you, no, we don't have that information. If it was online, it was online. If that was on the website, that wasn't us. And that is still such a prevalent experience when you're working with so many retailers out there. And the ones that don't have that experience many times is suboptimal, because it's also a workaround. So it's not a real solve for that issue. So they're not gathering the right data. They don't have the right information about you. They don't have the ability many times to offer you an appropriate, to turn that return is a multi-billion-dollar problem with retailers, have the ability to turn that return in a very easy way into another sale or into a gift card or into something that will be of value to that customer. And they're just using that workaround to make it a slightly less painful experience for that return for you, or for that whatever it is that you need. If you need an exchange, or maybe I just had recently, we'll mention the retailer, I had a recent experience in which I wanted to get an item in a different size. What I got was not the right size. They had me return the item in 7 to 10 business days, which I don't know, if I walked it over there would have been quicker, I think, to get this back in my account once they reviewed the item, once they made sure that everything was okay. and I could at the same time then buy the new item, charge my credit card yet again, and have these two parallel transactions happening. And that's just the way people are accustomed to getting this done, and people are accustomed to. So there's so much loss of revenue in that perspective, because I may decide, and most people do decide, that they're not going to go forward with a second purchase. But most importantly, it creates, there's something really important in the customer sentiment about your brand and about your company. And now I'd be incredibly hesitant to purchase with that company. And that's something that's very hard to measure. And we measure in many ways through different KPIs. You look at NPS, you look at different types of customer engagement metrics with your brand, but it's the losses on that, the halo effect of issues in integration, of issues in experience, of that breakdown that's happening is so much bigger. We can only estimate it's so much bigger than we are talking about. Which is the reason why when you make these changes, these very basic changes to your foundational operational excellence and the efficiencies and the way you interact with your customer and the way the technology is marrying the two, is tying the two together, you see incredible, unheard of returns on top line and bottom line. You see the cost reduction, you see the revenues, and it's not magic. It's just basic principles of customer experience, but when you're using the technology to deliver actual value in those instances.
That's it.
That was long.
No, I'm glad that you took that apart and walked us through it, because I think, again, lots of folks probably are frustrated by their experience when they're functioning as a consumer out in that environment, yet we just kind of have to deal with it. But I do think, not to lionize the heck out of LangChain, but shout out Harrison Chase and Jacob Lee and the crew, but that's where I think the magic starts to kick in with these intelligent applications that can sit on top of all these systems. So I appreciate you taking the time to unpack that, and we'll come back with some more.
I'll add something to this, which is, to me, and I don't think I was as eloquent and mentioned this in the very beginning. I have been managing retail and operations for many years, and I managed some pretty big operations. I did not know this was possible.
Right.
So part of my quest now, and speaking with my colleagues and being out there and learning more, is to say, hey, this is possible. It's not snake oil. It is not. We're not talking. But the problem is the experiences that so many have had with purchasing what I call the silver bullets, right? From so many of the vendors out there saying, it goes all the way back when I started managing customer experience, and folks were selling CRM systems out there and saying, this will make all your dreams come true. It will solve all your problems. Just put this in and you're going to clientele. And that is simply not true. And when you look at the BCG report and you look at the Gartner report, there's so many sources that are telling you that process and frameworks are more important than ever. The domain expertise is more important than ever to shape this, to make this happen in a way. So it is not the same. Now, if you're buying this technology or any other technology from someone who's promising you a silver bullet where your team is going to have no involvement, where you have and they're coming in and they're not really learning anything, and they're just plugging, just parachuting a solution onto your operation, it's gonna be the same thing, right? You just bought a bridge. Congratulations. You're gonna have something shiny to a picture of something shiny to show someone. It's never gonna realize potential, and which is also, we're talking about that 76% of companies have not seen the returns on their investment in technology and AI. And I think the Boston Consulting Group, I agree with them in thinking that the big piece of that is not having the right partnership, the right communications, the right domain expertise to shape what that needs to look like. And there's a lot of shiny objects. There's a lot of, jazz hands, I say, as well, like things that sound like they're going to be great, but there's no real value to them. KPIs that are just, fluffy, sugary things that are not impactful to your bottom line, your top line.
Spot on. So with that, we're going to call it on this one, and we'll be back for more. But Tati, I appreciate the time. Always appreciate the perspective.
Great to see you.
All right.
Thank you.
So